Do you know how seedless lemons get to be seedless? How is this possible? How do they reproduce? We need a botanist. Hi, I'm Melissa Clark. I'm a food reporter for the New York Times, and I'm here in the NYT kitchen studio to make lemon poppy seed pound cake because it's delicious. The brightness of the lemon and the dusky earthiness of the poppy seed just work together so well to make one of the most iconic, delicious baked goods, and one of the best things you can make for a potluck or a picnic because it's compact, it's easy to carry. You can just take the cake, you can slice it, and then put it sliced back in the same cake pan that you baked it in. You just wash the pan out first. Then it carries so well, and when you're ready to serve it, people can just take slices right out of the pan. And this recipe is particularly easy because I use olive oil. It has a richness that you don't get in a neutral oil, and you just whisk it together. You don't need a mixer. It's bright flavored. The poppy seeds give it a little bit of a crunch. The lemon makes it taste really bright and alive. It's got a light glaze on it. It gets a little crunchy, and it's just a perfect summer dessert, or winter, or spring, or fall. Whenever you make a loaf cake, you want to be very careful about buttering your pan so that it doesn't stick. Sometimes I use parchment paper, but the thing about parchment paper is you don't get as crisp edges. To do that, you want to just butter and flour your pan really well. This will work in a 9-inch loaf pan or an 8-inch loaf pan. It'll just be a little higher. Now, normally I use the butter wrappers that I keep in my freezer, but here at the kitchen studio, we are using a little bit of butter. You could use a pastry brush, but I'm just going to use the wrapper as a way to glide it onto the pan. And then just spread it around. You just want to get into the corners. Make sure that they are buttered.
How many butter wrappers do you have in your freezer?
Oh my God, the butter wrappers in my freezer, they're like this, because I use so much butter. So I'm just using the littlest bit of flour, and you sprinkle it in, and then shake it around. Shake it on the sides. Have a little fun. Shake out the excess, and then you have a buttered, floured pan. And buttery, floury fingers. I'm gonna zest the lemons into this bowl. The juice has higher acidity, but the zest is where all that perfumey flavor is. So here's another trick. When you're shopping for lemons, always smell it. If you can't smell anything, it means the lemon is probably old and the oils are dried out, and you're not gonna get as much fragrance or flavor. But you can see this lemon is very shiny. I can tell you that it's very fragrant, and then you know you're gonna have a lot of the lemon oil in the zest, and you're just gonna have a better tasting whatever it is you're making. So we're gonna zest, and then we're gonna squeeze the juice out and use that. We were a lemon head household, like we put lemon in everything. And I'm gonna add my sugar straight to this bowl. This is one of the fun parts, is I'm going to mix the sugar and the zest. I'm just gonna smoosh them together like that. This is a trick that I learned from the wonderful, wonderful cookbook author Dory Greenspan. And the idea is that by smushing them together like this, you're further extracting those essential lemon oils. The lemon oil is actually turning the sugar a little bit sandy, a little moist, a little sandy, and I can smell it. I'm doing this, and talk about aromatherapy. It smells so citrusy and delightful. And now I'm gonna just juice the lemons to get the juice. I am looking for 3 tablespoons. I'm getting a little bit of the pulp. It's sneaking through the strain here. That doesn't matter. It's not gonna hurt this recipe. If you want to strain it out, you can, but don't worry about it.
Do you ever have a lemonade stand growing up?
Oh my God, we had so many lemonade stands. In fact, I cannot pass a lemonade stand now in Brooklyn. I can't pass one without buying lemonade. Like, I don't care. Like, half the time the kids don't even make it. They're just pouring it out of a carton, and they're like $1, and I'm like, $1 for this much poured out of a carton? Okay, yeah, here you go. I just can't resist. 1. I'm gonna add the juice just right to this sugary mixture. 2. 3. So I'm saving the rest of it for the glaze, because we're gonna make a glaze for the icing. So this is gonna be for that. And then if I have any left over, I will put it in my seltzer, because lemon juice in seltzer is delicious. I'm gonna add my eggs and my buttermilk. So here's another little tip for you. If you are mixing eggs into a batter and you have liquid to mix into the batter, add the eggs first, beat them pretty well so that everything looks smooth, and then add the liquid, because otherwise the beating that you need to do to break the yolks will splash liquid all over yourself. Not that I've ever done that or anything. And then half a cup of buttermilk. If you do not have buttermilk, you can absolutely use yogurt. You can use sour cream. It's gonna be the same chemical reaction with the baking soda, baking powder. These are our wet ingredients. We have our flour, and we're gonna add the rest of the dry ingredients here. Baking powder and baking soda. Usually you use more baking powder than baking soda, but not always. Salt. And I'm just gonna whisk it together just to distribute the leaveners and the salt. And you can just add it all at once. You don't have to worry about adding it in stages or anything. I'm attempting to whisk slowly so that I do not get flour all over my black apron. That's what an apron is for, right? I'm just whisking it until it looks smooth. And now I'm gonna whisk in olive oil. When you're making cakes and you're using a fat in the cake, an added fat like butter or oil, they act differently and they'll give you a very different result. With a butter cake, you have to beat air into the butter, otherwise it's really dense. But with oil, you don't have to worry about that. Now, you can use regular oil, whatever neutral oil you have, instead of olive oil if you want to have a more neutral flavor, but you're not going to have that richness. And I love the olive oil richness with the lemon. It's just such a classic combination. And poppy seeds, that's it. This is a very easy cake. I'm just gonna put it into our pan. You don't wanna use your finest, fanciest olive oil here, by the way. Use just a very basic, extra virgin, inexpensive oil. I will be licking this out later when you're not looking. I'm just cleaning up the sides a little bit. Not that you really have to, but I like to put my loaf pans on little baking sheets because if you have it on this nice little sheet pan, you can easily turn it without accidentally, smushing the top. Halfway through baking, turn the loaf pan 180 degrees. It really depends on your oven and also what kind of pan you use and whether you use an 8-inch or a 9-inch loaf pan. So start checking it after 45 minutes, but it may take an hour and 15 minutes, even an hour and 20. And what you're looking for, you want a nice domed top. When you press it, the top should just spring back lightly. It should feel solid. It shouldn't feel liquidy under there. And then if you want to test with a skewer, you can stick a toothpick in. If there's some crumbs clinging, that's perfectly fine, but what you don't want is wet batter. Yeah, that is good. Okay, there's a little crummy action, but no wet batter. It is ready. If it comes out 100% dry, like really dry, you might have overbaked it. So you actually want those little bits, those little crumbs. So I've let this cool thoroughly in the pan, which takes a couple of hours, and I'm gonna pop it out. You really wanna make sure that it's entirely cooled down before you glaze it. Otherwise, you're gonna put the glaze on it and it's just gonna run right off. It's not gonna hold on the cake. If you've done a good job of buttering and flouring your pan, it should come out pretty easily. Always use a little offset spatula or a butter knife just to go around the edges, just to make sure. Nice. I'm gonna glaze the cake now, and then it's gonna take a little while for the glaze to set. So confectioner's sugar, it's not an exact science of how much lemon juice or liquid to add. You really have to eyeball it. I say 4 teaspoons in the recipe, but I would start with 3, and then let's see if we're gonna add the 4th or not, because it really depends on how old your sugar is, just how much moisture your sugar needs to hydrate, and how thick you want your glaze. So I'm looking for a glaze that is pourable, but not too thin. Think like heavy cream, or even a little thicker than heavy cream. What's thicker than heavy cream? Custard, pourable custard. So I'm gonna add the 4th. You can see that it's opaque and it mounds when I lift up the whisk. See how it holds its shape for a second. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more, not a whole extra teaspoon, but maybe just like an extra half a teaspoon. Just to loosen it up. Yeah, that's nice. You can drizzle this on, or you could brush it on. I'm gonna brush it on just to get a more even topping, but don't feel the need to brush. You can absolutely drizzle. It's gonna go a little bit more pale. At this point, this is what the recipe says to do, just like this. But today, we're gonna go rogue. I'm gonna do a little extra something because I'm feeling wild and crazy, and I wanna make it even prettier. This is a different kind of zester. It's not the microplane, it's just called a citrus zester. So I'm gonna do some fancy curlicues. They just have more of a presence. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit of poppy seeds. That way, there can be no doubt of what is in this cake. This is a lemon poppy seed cake. And you wanna do it fairly quickly because you can see the glaze is already starting to dry. Then, a touch of flaky salt right on top because I love lemon and salt is so good together in dessert. And that is it. We're gonna let this dry for at least an hour. It might be ready in half an hour, but give it a good hour. Try not to eat it before then. Step away from the cake. Cake time. Cake time is the best time. So our cake is thoroughly cooled. The glaze is set. I mean, you'll know the glaze is set. You just touch it lightly. And if it doesn't stick to your fingers, it's ready. I love cake. I like all cake. The middle ones are the best, although the ends are good too. And then we have some raspberries, It's delicious with whipped cream or ice cream. I always take really big bites. I take smaller bites. This cake is so good. It's so simple. It just tastes like lemon. You really do taste the olive oil, which I love with a lemon. It's rich. The glaze adds a little bit of sweetness, but not too much. The poppy seeds, a little bit of crunch. It's very balanced. It's just got all the things you want in a cake. Delicious, moist crumb, just sweet enough, and lemon. You can find this recipe and so many others at nytcooking.com. And if you make it, leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
Looks like you won an award. Yeah, you won the keiki.
I want a keiki, yep. A golden keiki.